Issue 4 of Fantastic Four Volume 3 didn't just add Chris Claremont on as the new ongoing writer. It also brought with it new penciler Salvador Larroca. Larroca is no stranger to the Fantastic Four, as he penciled Heroes Reborn: The Return, which basically kinda just starred the Fantastic Four. And in the late 90s, when these comics were originally published, I was super into his art. I had seen him draw Excalibur for a few months, as well as his work on the Psylocke and Archangel Crimson Dawn miniseries. Larroca has always had a pointy edge to his artwork, leading one to assume that he was part of the manga-influenced wave of 90s artists, but that isn't quite the full picture. Larroca is originally from Spain, and the European comic scene is drastically different from the one that exists here in the United States. Comics are actually considered a form of artwork there, where here they're mostly considered a form of entertainment. As such, European comic artists have many different influences, and they develop highly individualized styles. It is possible that Larroca had manga or anime influence his artwork, but he wasn't just hanging on to a trend in order to get hired. That was just how he drew, and sure, he may have happened to fit into the trend at the time. Since then, his art style has grown and evolved, becoming much more realistic in recent years. That said, the artwork in issue 4 is kinda ugly. Outside of 2 splash pages, though, I don't really think that Larroca was to blame for that. Re-examining the issue, the line work is fine. The cast look like themselves, there's room for Claremont's copious amount of word balloons and narrations, most of the action makes sense. So if the problem wasn't Larroca, or his inker, Art Thibert, then what was it? It was the coloring. Coloring in a comic book is often like the score of a movie. Until something goes wrong with it, you normally don't even notice that it's there. This was true of issue 4, where I was honestly more annoyed by the new and strange character voices and the plot problems that it had than I was with the artwork. But then I opened up issue 5 in order to flip through it and write my next time blurb, and holy smokes, y'all, issue 5 is flippin' gorgeous! Issue 5's colors are like a whole nother dimension being added to this book. And here's the thing, colorist Steve Oliff, who colored issue 4, didn't even do that bad of a job. Everyone is colored appropriately, the backgrounds work, there isn't really much technically wrong with issue 4. But there's also nothing fantastic, pun intended, about the issue. The colors feel flat, like they're lacking polish, and I kinda want to guess that the issue was rushed, but they would have been producing this issue way before its deadline. Sure, it was double-sized, and that means that things may have been close, but I still can't see it being so close that they didn't have the time to make this book look pretty. In contrast, the coloring in issue 5 is vibrant, with highlights, mood lighting, and it does scene setting. There's a warmth to the colors of issue 5 that just makes everything look so nice, and to me, that is a good sign. We're 1 issue into this run, and we're already seeing improvement in its looks. Let's see if we can say the same of the writing. My name is Ben, and this is Comic Book Breakdown, episode 12.3, New Foes, Old Flames. Reed Richards and Ben Grimm open issue 5 on a commercial flight to Stockholm, Sweden, where Reed is going to be joining a scientific symposium. Their aircraft, the Pogo plane, is currently out of commission. God, first the old school Fantastic car, now the Pogo plane? What is happening to the Fantastic Four's transportation? Is there a conspiracy or something? And so the pair have to fly like the rest of us. Having forgotten about this appointment, Reed booked the flight at the last minute, and the two are now flying coach. To admittedly mixed results. For Ben, who is about 2.5 people wide and, depending on who was drawing him, between almost 6 to 7 feet tall, this trip looks like pure misery. But pliable Reed, who is amicably tucked and squashed into his seat, is having a ball as he handles good PR for the Fantastic Four. Fans on the plane are asking for autographs, and he is happy to oblige. The mood on the plane is one of excitement and wonder, and you know that it's just not gonna last. A man stands up, dressed in khaki pants, combat boots, and he's armed with a gun that will later be revealed to be ceramic, which is how it got through the metal detectors. The gun looks like an Uzi to me, although I am far from a firearms expert. He declares that this aircraft has been seized by the Genosian Freedom Brigade until the great powers of the world do something to help their side of the Genosian Civil War. The people on this plane are their hostages. As the hijacker then heads to the cockpit, Ben recaps the situation in Genosha to Reed. And I'll be going into slightly more detail here. Genosha is an island nation off the coast of Madagascar, famous in comics for its role and history over in the X-Men books. Genosha's government used a procedure that they developed to enslave their mutant population, using them to then build a technologically advanced nation. After the intervention of the X-Men and eventually the Avengers, the mutates rose up, demanded freedom and equal rights, and thus started a civil war that runs well over a decade of publishing. Clearly, this dude ain't having it anymore. But neither are Reed and Ben, who exit their seats and confront the hijacker. They do give him a chance to surrender, he chooses not to, and then he opens fire at them. The bullets shatter, though, on Ben's stone skin, and they knock him out. At the back of the plane, two allies of the hijacker prepare for action. They heard the gunshots and they know that something has gone wrong. Ben confirms this as he walks towards their section of the plane, carrying the hijacker in one hand. "You already ruined his jacket. Can you just surrender now?" One of the hijackers balks, but not the third. He grabs a nearby woman holding a gun to her head, and he demands Ben surrender. Reed's fists suddenly pop out of the overhead compartments, downing both of the men in one strike. Then he helps the woman up, making sure that she's okay. She is actually so okay that she kisses him. Ben starts laughing at Reed's embarrassment, teasing that he is going to love telling Susie Q about this. Reed backs away from the grateful woman, assuring Ben that there is absolutely no need to do that. Claremont reestablishes the sense of humor that previous author Scott Lobdell had set up during his opening issues, and I love that. It really humanizes the pair to see them both struggle and enjoy a facet of their normal life. Their fame wins them the attention and some degree of adoration from their fellow passengers, but it also comes with a cost. Ben literally doesn't fit in, and Reed has groupies, which isn't something that I ever thought that I would be saying about Reed Richards, but as a happily married man, Reed doesn't appreciate that kind of attention. The Genosian attack is perilous, but they're a pretty good opening threat, easily defeated with little danger or risk to our upcoming narrative. They are actually a stealth introduction of the threat of Genosha, and the Fantastic Four will eventually be facing that in a few more issues. So Claremont is really setting up a long-term plot here. This also serves as a harbinger of the kind of story that Claremont will be telling throughout his Fantastic Four run, mining a lot of the world building that he did during his 20-year stint on Uncanny X-Men. Genosha isn't something that the Fantastic Four have dealt with before, and I like that. While Genosha may not be a brand new enemy in the Marvel Universe overall, it is certainly brand new to the Fantastic Four, which also plays nicely off of the themes introduced by Lobdell. The only thing that I don't like, and this is so petty, I almost can't believe that I'm bringing this up, is that Ben is the one who does the expositional dump about Genosha to Reed. Explaining things is almost literally Reed's job, and having Ben do it feels weird. I could see Reed being so focused in his research that he wouldn't pay attention to the Genosha situation, though, while Ben, who is much more likely to read the daily paper or watch the news, would accidentally get educated about it. Again, this complaint is utterly petty in a scene that works really well, so take it with a grain of salt. This is me nitpicking the most nitty of picks, man. We race ahead of our heroes now to Stockholm as the sun rises. Narration about the city gives way to a news report. The BBC reports that a mysterious fire destroyed the exotic animals house of London's famed Regent's Park Zoo, and the werewolves that have been held there for years have escaped. Also, good job me for getting that all out in one take. That you have no idea the first time I recorded this episode how many times it took me to get that out. But anyways, what in the hell are werewolves? And why should we care about them? We should care because that was Claremont just introducing our new C plot. We're actually going to follow up on this in only a few issues, so I'm just going to let you be mystified about it for now, dear listener. We have other things to do. The equally mysterious Crucible stands atop a tall spire in Stockholm. The two surviving monks who flew him here from Tibet finish climbing that spire and assure Crucible that all is ready. Crucible has one more move to make then. He gestures at two gargoyles that are near his feet. They begin to soften and change shape, the stone eventually breaking away from their faces to reveal Isabel Aguirre and Gordon Clay. Crucible assures them that although they remain immobile, their lungs and heart will remain stone. They will not die unless he wills it. They then talk for a while, their conversation mostly Crucible around about answering their questions with vague half-truths. For those wondering about it, Crucible claims to use alchemy to reshape flesh like the alchemists of old did with the elements. In fact, he turned them into stone gargoyles so that he might sneak them through customs. Although, how customs missed an armored supervillain ranting about how he's going to be testing the world, I don't know. Crucible explains that he wants Isabel and Gordon to be his eyes and ears in the world, helping him to find and identify his enemies, and if necessary, to help him destroy them. Both of them protest this, so Crucible begins to turn them to stone again. Either they aid him, or they'll sit upon this parapet forever. Their choice. Yeah, that actually would be the sentence. This is our first real look at Crucible as a villain. In our last two appearances, he was just a dude who showed up and talked a lot. Using Isabel and Clay as pawns is a smart move, as they're relatively unknown normal people, and their press passes are probably pretty useful too. We still don't know what his plan is, or how he's going to be testing the world, but he's on the cover to the issue, so I'm sure that we'll see more of him later on. I do not care much for his self-aggrandizing dialogue, nor do I like his actual character design pretty much at all. Crucible's design is this weird hodgepodge of a gray mask with a red V for the eyebrows, gray metal armor, golden chainmail underneath that. He's got a red gauntlet that looks technological on his right hand, and then he's got some, flowing red robes. Oh, and his other hand is bare, save for the 3 metal plates that are embedded in his skin. The color scheme here pairs and contrasts well, but the rest of this design is just... I don't even know what it is. Why is he wearing chainmail? Why does he have one red gauntlet? Why is it red when everything else about him is gold and gray? Why does he wear a gauntlet on one hand, but then has plates embedded on the other? And then, why is he wearing this robe? Is he a scientist? An alchemist, as he actually claims? It's possible. Is he a warrior? A former monk gone mad? I have no idea, as this design lacks a unifying concept, and it's hard to take a man seriously when he does not look good. So it takes hours for Reed and Ben to finish talking to the authorities about the attempted hijacking, and then they have to talk to the media circus that follows. But the chauffeur waiting for them, a beautiful woman with long, wavy black hair, waits for them patiently. Ben and Reed approach her, having clearly spotted her sign. As Ben greets her, she dashes forward and embraces Reed. Initially, I thought that she had kissed him, but looking at it again, I'm not so sure about that. It could just be an overly enthusiastic hug. Ben wants to know why it's happening, though. Reed introduces her as Alyssa Moy, an old friend. Reed lights up as he sees Alyssa's car, amazed that she still has it. Back in Reed's wild youth, once he was out of the service, he and Alyssa found this old car, fixed it up, and attempted the London to Cape Town road rally. They didn't succeed, but they had a great time losing. Flashback panels show the pair driving fast and dodging bullets as cars and planes follow behind them, bullet holes scarring the hood. This is something that even Ben didn't know about his old friend. But a friend of Reed's is a friend of Ben's, so he is pleased to meet her. They pile into the car as Alyssa takes the wheel and Reed calls home to check in with the family. In New York, Sue finishes paying the Fantastic Four's bills as Franklin plays with his toys on the floor. Johnny lounges on a nearby couch, bummed at having been passed over for this trip. Alyssa's unconventional style of driving has Ben on the edge of his seat, his yelps and exclamations cutting into the phone call. The call is then cut short when Johnny's fire powers accidentally set off the pier's sprinklers. Before they exit the car, Ben notes that Sue sounded a bit stressed at the end, although how he heard her over crying for his own life, I don't know. Watching their arrival are Isabel and Gordon, their press credentials granting them easy access to the event. Gordon curses their fate, while Isabel promises to find a way out of it. Later that evening, Reed and Ben dress for the symposium. Ben asks what's going on with it. Why are so many eggheads getting together? Reed explains that the scientific community has noticed some disturbing trends in the space-time continuum as of late. Alyssa's own email to him postulated that recent events have strained the very fabric of reality. Things like the X-Men events The Age of Apocalypse, as well as Onslaught, and the story of Heroes Reborn. Alyssa, dressed to the nines, joins them. Reed tosses out a chess move as he exits the room, losing himself in thought. Alyssa can't believe that Reed remembers the game. They haven't played this in over a year. But by the time she voices her complaint, Reed is already gone, agreeing with Ben's earlier statement that Sue sounded stressed. She stayed at home to handle their responsibilities. And although it isn't outright stated, I think that Ben came along because he's the better behaved between him and Johnny. But maybe Sue should have come. Surely Reed could have found some time for them to have some fun and relax. He starts to think about some nice things that he can do for her once they're back in New York, but an explosion rocks the building. Reed rushes to investigate. But we are gonna investigate this new character. Given the flashback that we saw during Alyssa's introduction, I figured that she was a previously established piece of Reed's backstory, someone that Claremont pulled out of his old back issues for a nice 1990 update. But no, this issue is actually Alyssa's debut. She is bold and adventurous, clearly, and very smart, like genius-level smart, and beautiful, yeah. To me, all of this immediately screams romantic rival, especially given how Claremont has been highlighting how handsome and well-loved Reed was on the plane scene. I have a very hard time believing that Reed would cheat on his wife, but I suppose we'll see. There aren't really any romantic or sexual tones to Alyssa and Reed's conversations or interactions, and even when she shows up dressed in a revealing evening gown, Reed doesn't look at her twice. His first thought is still for his wife. While I like this, it leaves me questioning why Claremont introduced Alyssa at all, if not as a romantic rival for Sue. Really quickly, I'm annoyed at Alyssa exclaiming that they haven't played the game of mental chess in, quote, over a year, end quote. Conversations between the Fantastic Four have already established that the Heroes Reborn adventure took up a year of literal time. Plus, this issue is the first time that Reed and Alyssa have seen each other, period, since it is her first appearance, so when would they have spoken about this chess game otherwise? This is another super petty complaint, I know it, but it still bugs me. Anyway, Reed rushes to where the explosion occurred and finds Crucible standing atop a pillar of stone that rises from the cracked ground. He spouts out glorious announcements about who he is as Reed scans the room, noting that the people in the area are unconscious, but not dead. He then stretches his arm out, knocking Crucible off balance as he grabs a device that Crucible has in one hand. Glancing quickly over it, Reed can tell that it's some kind of focusing device, but he can't tell much else about it. Then he glances at Crucible, finally taking the man in. This armor, it's vaguely Doom-esque. Could he have returned? Reed slips out of his tux, revealing his ever-present Fantastic Four costume underneath. He then pulls on his gloves, depresses a button on one, and summons aid. The thing charges into the room, with Alyssa close behind. He warns her to leave for her own safety, but Alyssa isn't one to run from a fight. Mr. Fantastic then exposits that even he thought that this guy might be Dr. Doom, but his actions lack Victor's finesse, and the technology of this device has none of Victor's subtlety. Whoever this guy is, he isn't Dr. Doom. Mr. Fantastic tosses the device to the thing, asking him to take care of it. Now, to me, that sounds like smash it. To Ben, though, it translates as throw it out of a window. So he throws it out of a nearby window. Mr. Fantastic almost face palms. It's not a bomb, Ben, and it might be important. He just wanted Ben to keep it safe. Mr. Fantastic tells the thing to go after it, and Alyssa volunteers to drive. The thing and Alyssa run to her car, Ben having noted the direction of his pitch. But no way can they find it in time before it lands who knows where. Alyssa assures him that they can. She tells Ben to stand on the car's running board while she climbs inside. Alyssa then throws a lever and jets erupt from the car's underside, allowing its wheels to fold out. The car hovers in mid-air and Ben yelps in surprise and happiness. Now this is how you fly. The rest of the issue, which is only a few pages, covers Ben and Alyssa's retrieval of the device and Mr. Fantastic's battle with Crucible. It's mostly just them trading insults. The only real thing of note is Crucible grabbing Reed and hitting him with some kind of energy, Reed exclaiming that it's like his mind is on fire. He fakes passing out, then sneak attacks Crucible when he gets close. But Mr. Fantastic is having a hard time controlling his body, commenting that it just feels like string. As he presses the attack on Crucible, Reed proclaims that he will beat Crucible, quote, beat you, beat you, beat you. Literally, B-E-A-T apostrophe C-H-U. When Crucible smiles, the fool can't see that he's already lost. Mr. Fantastic uses his powers to bulk up, and then he punches Crucible one last time. Using scanners installed in her car, Alyssa and Ben scoop up the device and return to the hotel where the symposium was being held at. While on their way, Alyssa has a chance to examine the device a bit, explaining that it should work like a scanner, like some form of technological telepathy. It can scan a person's thoughts, then send the information that it gathers elsewhere. Ben understands why Crucible would use it here. He could steal from the greatest minds on the planet if it worked uninterrupted, including Reed's. They arrive at the hotel and find ambulances on site. The fighting is all over and they rush inside. Neither of them notices Isabel and Clay, the pair having been assigned information-gathering duties on the Fantastic Four's new ally, Alyssa. Inside, Ben and Alyssa find Reed, but he's stretched out all over the place. Ben comments that even when unconscious, Reed's body normally snaps back to its normal shape. He hasn't seen him this bad before. They gather noodle-like Reed up in their arms, Ben asking after his old friend. Crucible is gone, but is Reed okay? Reed lays in Ben's arms tiredly, like a worn-out child. He smiles. He beat him. He fought real good, and he didn't give up, and he beat him. If you couldn't guess, Crucible has used a technological device to, it would appear, steal Reed's intelligence. His speech syntax has changed, becoming much simpler, and he's having trouble holding his body together. Is this permanent? Is this an ongoing process? Can a person recover from having their brain literally drained? I don't know, but this is a cool threat idea, even if Crucible himself is kind of a lame way to do it. Reed is an often overlooked member of the Fantastic Four, as he's the quiet science nerd, usually busy solving whatever threat the Fantastic Four face, and then expositing more dialogue about how he's doing so. He's almost a living, breathing narration machine most of the time, and so taking away that brilliant mind is a great story idea. Who is Reed Richards if he's not a genius? How will this affect his family, his superhero team? And what is Crucible's reason for doing so? What's his next move? He clearly isn't done, otherwise he wouldn't have sicked Isabel and Gordon on stalker duty. I'm still not sure what Crucible's deal is. Like with Terminus in issue 4, Claremont tells us what is going on, but not how it's going on. The two monks tell Crucible that all is ready, but what is ready? I'm guessing that they're the ones who planted the... I guess it's a knockout gas bomb? I guess that's what it was? But why did Crucible want an explosive knockout bomb? If the purpose of his device was to steal ideas and covertly get Reed Richards' brain too, then why not just have the monks plant the device and let it do its thing? The only thing that the bomb accomplished was guarantee that Mr. Fantastic and the Thing would end up getting physically involved. And sure, maybe that too was part of Crucible's plan, and we have a much longer and convoluted plotted work here, but if not, I'm going to be plenty angry about it. Because I also don't understand how Crucible is standing on top of that pillar of stone. We know that there was an explosion, but that should be the gas. The pillar is rising out of a cracked stone floor. It is clearly new, which implies that Crucible pulled it up with some previously unestablished earthbending ability. Can Crucible control stone like he can control flesh? I don't know, and it's beginning to get on my nerves. Earlier this episode, I asked if the writing could improve as the artwork had. And so far, I would give that a yes. Sure, I have some problems, but this was fun, and it was interesting. It introduced some new ideas, some new threats, and it set up a couple of dominoes that we'll get to watch fall over later. I do think that Crucible is more annoying than threatening right now, simply in the manner that he holds himself and speaks. He is clearly dangerous, but he sure as heck isn't cool. Much like Reed's statement earlier, if Crucible is meant to be a new Doctor Doom, or a new take on a Doom-like character, well, he really isn't living up to the hype. There are also, unfortunately, coloring problems throughout the issue. While overall the colors are warm and well rendered, Alyssa's hair goes from black to blonde in one panel. Crucible's costume changes on the regular as well, his red gauntlet turning black for a panel before going back to red. His other arm, with the plates in it, is colored red in one panel, then flesh tones in the next. I kind of feel like the colorist was as confused about Crucible's overall design as I am. Otherwise, not a bad issue. I ain't in love, but I'm pretty happy. Issue 6 opens at Oracle Incorporated, the corporate headquarters of the Heroes for Hire, another band of superheroes. Sue Richards is here, and has been here, training with Danny Rand, the wielder of the Iron Fist. The pair spar, Sue fighting with an invisible bow staff. Watching them is a menagerie of heroes, including Luke Cage, She-Hulk, Misty Knight, and Colleen Wing. Sue does well in the fight, as Danny initially underestimates her combat skills. But once she knocks him down, preparing for the final blow, he gathers his will into his fist, making it unto a thing of iron. He strikes at her, unleashing that energy as an awesome blast of force. The blast hits Sue head-on, only her instinctive force field saving her from injury. But she does fly across the room. Everyone, including Danny, rushes across the room to check on her, and they find Sue laughing. She-Hulk makes sure that Sue is fine, and she assures her friend that she is. That lesson was the most fun that she's had in ages. Sue next assures Danny that she is fine and schedules another lesson for next week. She then moves to an indoor pool at Oracle, tired of thinking and focusing. Both Danny and her powers act as extensions of their will. They are only as strong or as weak as they let them be. To use them requires constant focus, and right now Sue just wants to let go. She dives into the saltwater pool, enjoying the cold water, the weightlessness, the sense of freedom. She wishes, just for a moment, that she never had to leave it. A hand then wraps around her ankle and suddenly pulls Sue deeper into the pool. She panics for just a second as she turns to see who her company is, and then she relaxes at the sight of him. Namor, the Prince of Atlantis, pulls her close. The two lock hands and stare into each other's eyes. Gifted with flight, Namor floats them above the pool, and Sue's invisible force field holds her up. The pair exchange greetings, chat, and flirt for a minute. Namor is perhaps the only other man for Sue, and he has fought for years to win her heart. But Sue has always remained steadfast in her relationship with Reed. She cares for Namor, and they have become close friends over the years. They talk about that relationship now, the possibilities, fresh in Namor's mind after his experiences on the reborn Earth. But Sue loves Reed, and if she betrayed that love for Namor, then she wouldn't be worthy of Namor's love anymore. Reed may not always be the most romantic man alive, but he's still Sue's. All Namor wants, he insists, is that she be happy. If that means Reed Richards, then he is a lucky man. He assures her of his friendship, and then leaps from the platform. Sue promises that she is his friend as well, before doing the same. These opening two scenes flowed together so well and comment on so much about Sue Richards that I didn't want to interrupt them with a breakdown. But now we're in the clear. The training scene with Iron Fist exists for a number of reasons. First off, Chris Claremont wrote Power Man and Iron Fist's team-up book for a time, and Misty Knight and Colleen Wing were characters that appeared there. Claremont even pulled Colleen into Uncanny X-Men after he left Power Man and Iron Fist for a time, as a failed love interest for Cyclops after Jean's death. Claremont has a history with these characters. He likes to write them, so this is an authorial way of revisiting some old friends. She-Hulk, however, has been a member of the Fantastic Four for a time, and is pretty good friends with Sue. Claremont also likes writing strong women, which is another function of this scene. While She-Hulk is a physical powerhouse, to be sure, Sue's strength is much more understated, and she hasn't really played a combat role in this volume of Fantastic Four so far. Claremont is not only establishing her physical combat skills here, but also her ability to adapt in combat and a love for the thrill of it. It is kinda easy to just dismiss Sue as the mother of the Fantastic Four, but Claremont is saying that she is so much more. I have a small bit of confusion regarding the timeline of this scene, though. Claremont's narration tells us that Sue has been training with Danny for weeks, possibly since her return to the Marvel Universe. But then he also has Danny underestimate her combat skills, which I don't think a skilled opponent like Iron Fist would do after weeks of working with her. If anything, Danny should have a better measure of her combat prowess at this point. That isn't to say that Sue can't try new things, like striking with her bow, discorporating it, then recreating it on the fly, which is something that would catch Danny off guard, but that isn't really what the narration tells us. Claremont's use of Oracle Incorporated is very smart as well. While the latest volume of Heroes for Hire had been cancelled by the time this issue was published, Oracle Incorporated was their headquarters and their employer for a time. It was also originally founded by Namor, then left in the care of his old friend, Jim Hammond. This is why the swimming pool is salt water and not a treated pool like we would naturally assume. Claremont not only has a way to visit some old favorites here and demonstrate Sue's abilities, but he also masterfully sets up Namor's presence. This guy is good. The scene with Namor would initially indicate a potential love triangle. The Fantastic Four have explored and re-explored a Sue Namor ship like a dozen times, and no way are they going to break up the Fantastic Four just to explore it fully. That ship has sailed, and it has sunk. There isn't really a lot at stake having Namor and Sue flirt a bit. What I think that Claremont is doing is he's telling us more about Sue. How, yes, she is attracted to Namor, and she appreciates his romantic gesture, but she also isn't willing to give in to those feelings. Even when Reed disappoints Sue, she isn't willing to cheat on him. This ties directly into the previous scene when Sue was talking about having a strong will. She can't just be strong in combat. Even when taking a relaxing swim, even when she's trying to let all of her focus go, she can't. Last issue, Claremont made a point of establishing that Sue was miffed at staying in New York while Reed went to Sweden. This moment here is building on that frustration. Afterwards, Sue crosses New York on foot, jogging on an invisible path that she generates in the sky. Namor's got her all hot and bothered, and she is trying to both stay in shape and burn off some energy. As she arrives at Pier 4, Sue notices a car that has been following her. She tells Johnny to get its license plate number so that they can investigate further, but Johnny blows it off. It's a police vehicle, sis. It says so right on the side. They're probably a fan and just wanted an autograph. He's got something way more important to show her. Johnny opens the door, and she steps inside. The foyer of the building has been decked out in roses. Reed picks one, having recovered from the attack last issue, and hands it to her. He missed her, and realized that it had been forever since he last bought her flowers. She's surprised and touched, kind of glossing over Ben's introduction of Alyssa Moy. Reed goes on, explaining that he has tickets to opening night at Yankee Stadium for himself and Franklin. Sue will be busy getting fitted for an evening gown so that Reed can take her dancing tomorrow night, the anniversary of their first date. Ben ushers Alyssa out, giving the two lovebirds some privacy. He had been taking her on a tour of the pier, stopping only to see Sue's reaction. Alyssa, however, is more interested in Reed. Isn't this kind of behavior odd for him? Loving your wife and your kid ain't crazy, Ben argues. Reed's just relaxing, letting himself be human for once. Alyssa hopes that he's right. Way to bring us all down, Alyssa. Not that her thoughts aren't accurate. Part of what makes Reed's gesture here so touching is that it is sudden and kind of out of character. I'm not saying that Reed Richards has never been romantic before, or that he doesn't think of his wife. But those moments are few and far between, and this one is especially well-timed, given how Claremont just set up Sue's hunger for attention and romance. But, given how we left Reed at the end of last issue, and now this happens, Alyssa's pretty smart to be cautious. And this is why Claremont added Alyssa to our cast. She's not a love interest, she's the new brain. Ben and Johnny are just going to accept this kind of behavior, knowing that it is good for Sue and Reed's relationship, and just kind of being happy for them. But in not questioning it, they might be missing something important. As someone who knows Reed but exists outside of the family that is the Fantastic Four, Alyssa is the only one who will be keeping an eye on him, and that may make her the key to fixing whatever is wrong before it hurts them all. That night, which is narrated as being at night but is drawn and colored like it's a day scene, Reed and Franklin enjoy the ball game. Reed even holds Franklin up, choosing not to stretch his body so that Franklin can catch a foul ball fair and square. It's a thrilling thing for Franklin, and it's a pretty heartwarming scene for all. It is also a nice reminder that the Fantastic Four are human, and more than that, New Yorkers. Sue, on the other hand, spends the day with She-Hulk and Janet Van Dyne, best known as the Avengers Wasp. Janet is something of a fashionista herself and contacts the designer Kay Serra to design something new and stunning for Sue. Sue is suitably embarrassed by all the attention, which is another cute, humanizing thing about her. Sue Richards has stared down alternate realities, cosmic gods, alien conquerors, and her own dark side, and never once blinked. But ask her to try on a revealing dress, and she blushes. The next night, Reed leaves Pier 4 dressed up very nicely. Even Johnny is impressed, saying that he wouldn't even mind if Reed went clubbing with him. Before Reed leaves, though, Alyssa makes her next move in their mental chess game. Reed almost blows this off, but then he tosses out a move, putting her in check. Then he's out the door and on his way to Rockefeller Center. He totally misses the teleportation effect on a building across the street. A small voice informs Mother, with a capital M, that they have arrived. At 30 Rock, Reed and Sue, dressed past the 9s to the 10s, if such a phrase exists, meet. Without even saying a word, the pair take each other's hands and begin to dance. Back at Pier 4, Ben is busy prepping dinner for the house. Alyssa and Franklin sit at the table, but as Ben rambles on, Franklin is the only one listening. Ben asks Alyssa if everything is okay, specifically asking if the chess game threw her, and if it did, then why. Reed's last move put her in check, Alyssa explains, but that was the point. She was setting up a trap for him. Normally, Reed would never have fallen for something like that. Something is wrong. She knows it. Ben argues that they ran every test that they could after the fight with Crucible, and they all came back negative. Reed is fine. Then they'll have to invent some new tests, Alyssa counters. As she speaks, Ben cracks an egg, and the egg cries out in pain. Then it starts swearing. Everyone backs away from the egg as it cracks open. A small yellow chick with muscly arms, that's shockingly gross, stands there swinging, a clock face on its face. Hard-boiled Henry, in a voice like that of Tweety Bird from Looney Tunes, orders these beings to prepare to face their doom. Ben grabs Hard-boiled Henry and orders Alyssa to get Franklin out. She hesitates, but Ben sees that clock on Hard-boiled Henry's face as a timer, and a timer means a bomb, and a bomb means... The explosion destroys the kitchen. Alyssa's head rings as she checks on Franklin, who is uninjured. Then, a swarm of alien beings enters the demolished area. There are 9 of them in total, and this is TechNet, who are led by a large, blue-skinned woman named Gatecrasher. She tells Alyssa that TechNet are the finest bounty hunters in space, and they have a warrant for Franklin. And the Thing isn't happy to hear it. He charges into the aliens, shouting for Alyssa to run. She grabs Franklin, promising to take care of him, and leaves. The Thing fights fiercely against TechNet, who buy Gatecrasher enough time in order for one of their number, Pharaoh Squared, to follow Alyssa. The rest of them handle the Thing. And they do. TechNet a totally unknown force to Ben. He adapts his fighting strategies quickly, but there are too many of them with too many strange powers. He is eventually knocked out and taken captive. Not far away, Alyssa finds a row of payphones and attempts to call 911. Pharaoh Squared, who has 4 arms, each one wielding a sword, cuts through the phones. Alyssa starts to run again, but Pharaoh Squared is never far behind. Elsewhere, Reed and Sue finish their dance on the balcony. They just hold one another after one of the most romantic, most wonderful nights of their lives. That is some dramatic irony for you. So this whole issue is really spent building towards this moment, the romantic, sweet moment between Sue and Reed, and then contrasting it against the sudden, horrible attack of TechNet. I'm hesitant to explain much more about TechNet at this point. They're such an odd group, both in appearance and powers, that it'll take me forever to do a long-form description of them all. Thankfully, most of their names line up with their powers. So Thug, a strongman dwarf with a frog face, is super strong. China Doll is a blue-skinned woman whose legs are like a snake tail, and she can shrink people for easy transportation. Joy Boy manifests his victim's fondish wish, so Ben, who wishes to be human, turns back into a human during the fight. But knock Joy Boy out, and the effect goes away. Ring Toss uses energy rings to capture people, so on and so forth. TechNet is really built for bounty hunting, and they have little personality outside of Gatecrasher, who's really just kind of authoritarian and silly. They're another concept that Claremont is pulling from the X-books as well. The last time that TechNet appeared was over in Excalibur, where they attempted to capture the uber-powerful Rachel Summers, known then as the Phoenix. Like Franklin, Rachel has the power to alter reality if she pushes her powers to their limits. So TechNet coming for a young boy who created his own pocket universe isn't exactly without precedence. That said, seeing TechNet here really threw me for a loop. I had honestly forgotten that they existed. But again, they are a new force to the Fantastic Four, which really gave them an edge in this fight, and I appreciate that. Given that they're bounty hunters, we also have a new mystery. Who hired them to capture Franklin? Also, where the floop is Johnny Storm? I know that this fight was fast, but come on, John, where you at? This issue is the first one that is 100% written by Claremont. Issues 4 and 5 were plotted by Lobdell, but scripted by Claremont. It reads so much better. Like, I finally feel like Claremont knows what he's doing with these characters and where he wants to go with them. That is awesome to see, and it makes me really relieved to move forward into the rest of the series. Next time, Alyssa and Franklin are alone on the streets of New York, hounded by Pharaoh Squared, and hunted by something else entirely. Then, in issue 8, the Fantastic Four must face down an army as the multiversal protectors known as the Captain Britain Corps are brought against them. Join me in 1 week for episode 12.4, The Power of the Babe.
You remember me as a babe. Babe with the power. Power of voodoo. You do. Remind me as the babe.
Everyone, there are a million podcasts vying for your time and attention, and I'd like to thank you for listening to mine. If you would like to get in touch with me to share a concern, request a series, compliment me, berate me, whatever you like, send me an email at cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Otherwise, thanks for listening.